Good evening. Welcome to this evening's edition of the Evening Review Show. My name is Jemima Beerkes, your host. Now, the wave of decolonization is sweeping across Namibia, and as a result, many Namibians, young Namibians in particular, are calling for the removal of colonial statues like that of Curt von François. And today we are speaking to Harald Hecht, who is the chairperson of the Forum for German-speaking Namibians, on the decision, the vote that was passed in the City of Windhoek Council last week to have the Curt von François statue removed. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Hecht.
Thank you for the platform provided, Ms. Beerkes. We really appreciate the fact that we've been invited.
Now, before we get into the details of the interview, can you just explain to us what the German-speaking Namibians Forum stand for, what it is about?
Yes, the forum was inaugurated last year on 21 April. It was delayed 1 year due to COVID-19, but there has been an initiative since 2019 where German-speaking Namibians said we got to get more involved in the daily activities of political and socio-economic life in Namibia, because we are just as much Namibians like everybody else. There have also been calls from leaders. Former President Hifikepunye Pohamba called us a tribe without a chief. Current President Geingob challenged us to take up our place, our room in the Namibian House. And definitely one can say that in the last 30 years, the German-speaking population of Namibia, although being very influential in economic and commercial circles, have allowed themselves to become marginalized. And we want to turn that around by speaking to everybody in Namibia, creating a platform for dialogue, basically, to sum it up.
Absolutely. So what is the forum's view on the removal of Curt von François and other colonial structures?
I wish I could answer that in a single sentence. I've just been overseas. We've been in contact. I only landed this morning, so I'm still picking up on all the newspaper reports and all the interviews that have been made and all the comments. But we've also got a WhatsApp group as Forum of German-speaking Namibians. Obviously, there's been a lively debate on that forum group. So much so that tomorrow night we've got our next committee meeting, and we want to discuss the matter and formulate a press release. You know, whenever there are issues, current issues, when the joint declaration came out last year, when Shark Island was topical, when COVID-19 hit us, we always present press releases where we formulate our points of view to the public.
Okay, now von François is remembered by the affected communities as a murderer because of his role as the commander at Hornkranz, where women and children were killed amongst many of the Nama community. So what are your take on the claims that these structures like his, especially the fact that it is a centerpiece in Windhoek, is a painful reminder that need not be there?
Yeah, we were not totally surprised, because this thing has been coming up and it's been on the cards for a number of years. And maybe one should also consider the fact that it's 32 years after independence that it is now finally time, in inverted commas, to remove that statue. I understand and respect the point of view of the affected communities, you know, of the descendants of the genocide. It's one of the, if not the darkest chapter in the history of Namibia, and we have to try and find, you know, also in terms of the joint declaration, find common ground and possibly move ahead and look forward. But the forum has got a key objective, and that is the reconciliation. We know that there's a lot of healing of wounds, challenges that we need to address, and this is also why we said last year, when, for instance, when Shark Island was criticized by the OTA and the NTLA for the continued commercial use as a camping site, we said, should it not rather be also converted into a memorial site? We supported the OTA and the NTLA on that one. So yes, but getting back to your question, it's not a simple answer. There are even today, the current finance deputy minister said, no, Curt should remain, Curt von François, because we need that remembrance platform for the generations going forward, that you know, of the atrocities that were committed at Hornkranz and things like that. So maybe one should really have a think tank at a national level, where the Forum of German-speaking Namibians would then take up its role in that house, and come also forward with ideas and look at all the national issues, national monuments, memorials, heroes, and maybe have one big memorial site where one honors all the people that have played a role in the establishment of Windhoek. And that would include somebody like Jan Jonker Afrikaner. And that, to me, would be the real national reconciliation that I think we've moved away from since independence. You know, after independence, I always believed in the idea of national reconciliation. Let's leave the past behind us where possible. Not forget, remember, but let's move forward. And I think from my side, there's an urge to get back to this national reconciliation issue.
Absolutely, you say you feel that there's a need to get back to national reconciliation. We don't have a true reconciliation, like in South Africa, for instance. Do you think enough is done in this country, and what ought to be done?
I thought a lot when I was traveling on the autobahns in Germany yesterday and on Monday. Interesting. Because I knew that the press would ask questions, and legitimately so. And I thought maybe the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is an opportunity that we've missed. And the question is, we are now 32 years down the line in terms of independence. Maybe we should still have it. You know, put all the things on the table, try and learn from the past, and then have a common strategy where we say, let's move forward. On the other hand, I don't think we've got the level of bitterness amongst our inhabitants in various ethnic groups, like we seemingly have in South Africa. I think also our transition to independence has always been peaceful, and Namibians have always been peaceful. So I would also not overemphasize the fact that there could be bitterness amongst the ethnic tribes, including the German-speaking Namibians, if we don't find the denominator of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. But it is something to consider.
So you've said, yes, we need to have perhaps a site where all of these structures are put in place. But do you think what else can be done to put this matter, including the genocide matter, finally to bed?
The genocide matter is a bilateral issue currently between the governments of Germany and Namibia, as we know. And we've been asked, as German-speaking Namibians, go and speak to your people in Germany. There's no way we can speak to our people in Germany. So there, I'm just hoping that at bilateral level, somehow a common denominator will be found. It still has to go through the National Assembly here. We haven't seen that. We had a discussion last year. We thought it was going to be put to the vote. It wasn't. So a year later now. So are we just going to miss this opportunity? Or are we going to wait for better perspectives in that regard? It's a very difficult one. But all I can say is that on the ground, I think Namibians are reconciling. We've got mixed schools, we've got mixed sports clubs. I mean, if I talk to my children and say that in my day sport was based on ethnic, on ethnicity and things like that, they don't believe me. So our kids are already growing up in a free and an independent Namibia. I'm not saying we should forget the past, but I think also we should rather, there's maybe a little bit too much emphasis on the past, and then maybe on a selected basis, we should rather concentrate on what unifies us. We always seem to be divisive in Namibians. Also, if I look at our scenario in football, getting off the track a little bit, there's so much division in Namibia sometimes where I think it's unnecessary. Let's find that common mission, that common vision, and let's move ahead in the sense of one Namibia, one nation.
Absolutely. You say that we have a lot in common. Indeed, the German and Namibian, especially the affected communities, have a shared history. But the issue that remains on the table, the burning issue, is a land ownership. We know that 70% of the land, commercial land, are in the hands of white Namibians. Most of these people are German-speaking Namibians. So how can Namibia address this land? Because affected communities, especially the Nama community, are living in corridors. They have nothing. And this is as a direct result of the genocide.
That is the one issue, and the other one on the Namas is that the development aid does not seem to go south of Windhoek. I mean, that criticism we hear quite often. But thank you for asking that question. If we have a look at you are right. 70% is still in the hand of whites, of the commercial farmland. But at independence, that statistic was even more skewed from a formerly disadvantaged point of view. The money on the table in terms of the joint declaration is 1.1 billion euros. That's translated into today's exchange of almost 20,000 million Namibian dollars. That's a lot of money. You could buy 600 commercial farms with that. We've done that calculation based on an average size of 3,000 farm of 3,000 hectares, and then you could buy 600 farms, and then that statistic that you're referring to would then be 50-50. And wouldn't that be a step already in the right direction? Because the government always says it doesn't have the funding to buy farmland from the current ownership.
So since you've been doing the calculation, I get the sense that you've been doing a lot of thought, put a lot of thought into this, the joint declaration that is on the table right now. So is the forum looking into getting involved in the reparation, the restitution process that's going on?
Obviously, as I said, the reconciliation and the healing of the wounds, we will get involved because we are the people on the ground here. We live in Namibia every day, and we want to also reconcile. You know, we want to put this history behind us. I know it's a process. I know we cannot forget. But as far as the negotiations are concerned, we do not play a role. But I must say, I've just been to Germany now, and I spoke to people of the Auswärtige Amt, you know, of Foreign Affairs, and they seem to take cognizance of the forum. And that I find very interesting. Also, when the German delegation was here for the German reunification festivities that we had on 3 October, we had dinner with them. So they are looking at our views as well. So maybe we can play a role as a lobbyist, as a catalyst, as a mediator, as an informant. I don't know what. Whatever role we can play, we will try and play.
In conclusion. So one of the major issues when it comes to the land issue right now, obviously, is the fact that affected communities, especially the Overhero community, are denied access to what has been their ancestral land that is now occupied by Germans, and they cannot pay respects to their ancestors. So as a forum, what are you addressing this? Have you put thought into this issue? Because it's a very painful issue.
The issue of the ancestral land, yeah. I know it's a very topical issue, and I was invited to a panel discussion 3 months ago, and unfortunately it was cancelled at the last minute. I think farmland could become available with the 1.1 billion euros on the table. Also, a lot of the German-speaking community children are going to Germany to further their education, don't necessarily come back. So there's also the effect of evolution that the German-speaking community in Namibia is dwindling. That is a fact. It used to be 25,000 at independence. It's now probably closer to 15 to 18,000. And maybe also a lot of people don't see a future necessarily on farms. You see, there's maybe a fundamental difference. The German-speaking community sees they love their land and they don't want to be removed from their land, but they see it as a commercial entity first and foremost. They want to, you know, with cattle breeding and whatever breeding they do, charcoal production, tourism, they want to make a living. And for the affected communities, I think land is a more political issue. It gives them that sense of security. Although the poverty levels might not be reduced, it gives them the sense of security that they may not be removed from the land. There have been so many forceful removals in the history of Namibia. So I think it's still that security issue. The assurance that I cannot be removed from my land, that is playing a big role in that whole ancestral land thing. And obviously, if you can't visit the graves of your ancestors, that is a problem. But I'm not too sure whether that's ever been denied by any of the current owners. you know.
No, they have actually been denied by some of the owners, especially.
Okay.
Caps Farmers is one of the issues that have been highlighted. The areas that have been highlighted where they are not allowed to go into. I remember one of the chiefs were buried a few years ago, and they couldn't even go because his grandparents were on that particular farm, and they were not allowed to go and bury him on his ancestral land. So are these issues that the forum are discussing?
Absolutely, because that is why I said early on we need we want to create a platform for dialogue, and very often it's also that we don't know of each other's cultures, we don't know of each other's habits, we don't know why it is so important to certain communities and might not be important to us, and vice versa. So really the forum is there that we want to hear all the other communities in Namibia, but we also want to be heard.
Yes. Some of the ideas that when the Shark Island conversation came up, could you please share with us on that? How
we formulated a press release, and maybe the timing was a bit unfortunate because it was on the 18th or 19th of December last year, and you know, as we know, Namibia then actually goes into a well-deserved break, and we only resume activities sort of 10-12 January. I can send it to you. We said that we support the call for the further commercialization of Shark Island being a campsite should be stopped, and it should be converted into a fully fledged memorial site. And then we went one step further. You got this evangelical Lutheran church on top there, the German community. We said there we could have a joint service, you know, of all the communities, and address the healing of the wounds. So it's similar to what Germany and France have done. They always have got a day of remembrance, and including a church service. So that is an idea that we had, and we would have wanted to take it one step further. But since then we haven't heard anything on Shark Island, but we are ready to play our vital role there.
Lastly, to really now conclude, and going back to Curt von François, there are some people who feel that he's a murderer, but then there are also others who feel that he's a hero. Do you think? What do you think about the feeling that he is a murderer, and then those that are feeling that he's a hero?
Again, a Truth and Reconciliation Commission would probably we would probably be able to reconstruct what happened in Hornkranz. I mean, do we know fact by fact that what happened there 100 years, 110 years ago? We've got no eyewitness accounts, for instance. I'm not denying the events there. I'm just saying a Truth and Reconciliation Commission would probably give us a bigger probability of establishing the facts. And then there have also been, we've had three eras here. We've had the colonial time, we've had apartheid time, and we've got 30 years of independent Namibia, including the liberation struggle. And every era had its dark side, if I can call it that. Every era had positives, but also a lot of negatives. So really, if we were to look at what happened, shouldn't we then go through the full 120 years?
But it was a genocide. It was not just a dark side.
It was a genocide, and it's accepted as a genocide. But on the other hand, there are a lot of people that are supporting that Curt von François stay on. You know, so why do they say that? And they also, the deputy finance minister is also a descendant of the affected communities. Why does she say that?
Yeah, my question was, some people feel that he's a hero. Do you agree that he was a hero for some people? While others believe he was a murderer?
I'm not sure whether I've heard those calls that he was a hero. Okay, his great-grandson, I think, said that. Okay, and there's maybe a family connotation there. And I don't think the forum's point of view would be that he's a hero, but he's been instrumental in establishing Windhoek. You know, he's been one of the founders of Windhoek, so we can probably.
He was certainly not a founder. Jan Jonker was the founder.
But how do you know that for a fact?
How do you know for a fact that he was?
Exactly. You see, so we got these divergent views, and this is why we need to maybe sit around a table and try and reconstruct our history. On the other hand, is it going to assist us if we try and reconstruct our history, or should we rather say, let's move forward?
But how do you move forward if you deny certain issues? Like you've just denied Hornkranz.
I've not denied it.
Indirectly, you did.
No, I've just said no. I've not denied. I've just said there are. There are no eyewitness accounts anymore.
So does that
no, not necessarily, but Yeah, there are other issues in Namibia's history where we also don't have, which we just seem to neglect. I'm not going to mention anything because I don't want to put oil into the fire. Definitely not. All I'm saying is that the Hornkranz issue is probably an issue on its own, but the fact that he was instrumental in establishing the city of Windhoek from a today's perspective, there must have been a reasoning why the statue was erected in 1965, and maybe one should go back to the archives and have a look at what the motivation of the current apartheid city council at that time was. Why did they erect a statue in his honor?
So there are also no longer any eyewitnesses left that have related the horrific ordeals that people at Shark Island endured, and yet you just conceded that genocide was indeed. You accepted it was a genocide. Yeah. So why do you have difficulties with the Hornkranz that is connected to? I don't have difficulties with Hornkranz. I'm just not as informed, to be very honest. But on the genocide, I can tell you, when I spoke to the victims or the descendants of the affected communities, they said to me the war actually per se was not the actual genocide, but it was more the concentration camps afterwards. And you can't deny the concentration camps at Shark Island, Altefeste, and in Swakopmund. No.
But there was actually a headquarters at. There were people that related the story. It was in written form. What happened at Hornkranz. It is in the book of in the diary of Hendrik Witbooi. So how do you have an issue with Hornkranz? What happened?
I don't have an issue with Hornkranz. I just want to make that clear. I'm just saying that he's linked now to that incident, and it seems to be that seems to be the point of no return for the opponents, that they say he must be removed at all costs. Okay. And then there are other people that are saying he should remain, his statue should remain, and for the future generations not to forget and to remember. And I'm saying, is it not maybe worth a thought to have Jan Jonker Afrikaner, Curt von François, and whoever might have been influential in the establishment of Windhoek, a joint statue, a joint memorial site, because they all played a role.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Hecht. It was a very interesting conversation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beerkes.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good evening.
Three, two, one.
Here we go!
We Talk brings you community news that lies at the heart of Windhoek residents. If you would like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, contact wetalk@synergy.com.na.
Kletskompas is 'n Afrikaanse kontinuïteitsprogram met Namibiese nuus en onderhoude. As jy jou handelsmerk of veldtog op hierdie platform wil vertoon, kontak klets@synergy.com.na.